everyone, and welcome to Pro Wrestling Inside Out. And we are going to be talking to Superstar Bill Dundee and Rodney West, and it's Booking Mid-South Wrestling with Bill Dundee. And you're going to hopefully enjoy this program. And we thank everyone for being a part. And if you have any questions, go ahead and send them to Rodney and Bill, and they will answer those questions. I'm going to step out right now, and I'm going to listen to Bill and Rodney talk. And I may jump in occasionally if I have something I want to say tonight. Go ahead, Rodney, Bill, take it over.
Thank you very much. Again, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to what we feel is a celebration. Bill had the opportunity this afternoon to see some of his masterpieces. Bill, how did it go?
I thought it went very good. I started to watch 5 minutes of it. Next thing I know, an hour went by. So I didn't do the other two. I was going to watch the three we're doing tonight and just watch one.
I'm telling you, well, you just got your computer set up. So
yeah, well, that's the other thing.
And, if you just get it set up for me. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'll tell you right now, when you start watching tonight, you'll be up all night long watching them because they are great. They are fantastic. And after all of these years, they still hold up. Even though the production was not at the quality as it is today, we all know that. But remember, that was only a 2-camera shoot. But in 2 cameras, they got a whole bunch. And you have to admit, that's some really, really good stuff. First thing I want to talk about, and I think at the end of the program last week, you were talking about Buddy Landell. Talk about Buddy. Talk about how you chose him to come on your crew.
Oh, Budro, I loved you to death, but he was his own worst enemy. When Budro had if you said to Buddy, next Monday night in Memphis or next Monday in New Orleans, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. That was the worst thing you could do to Buddy, because I did that to him 3 or 4 times and he never showed up. So I don't know if he went nervous or just went drinking for celebrating and drank a little. I don't know. But I learned, don't tell him nothing till the night of.
Right, till he shows up.
Right. He was a hell of a talent.
That's sad. I mean, that is really sad. This man, with the ability that he had, could have been a headliner anywhere. He could have basically wrote his check wherever he wanted to go.
Right.
I mean, he was just great.
He was the nature boy, and Ric Flair. He was a far better worker than Ric Flair.
I agree.
His message was different every night. Now, I know his brain set was different from Ric's too, but that's another story. But as far as a human being, I loved Budro to death, and he was always good to me, and whatever I kind of asked him to do, he would do in the wrestling business. So we had no problems there, and he really had no ego.
Wow. Well, I mean, we always knew that Buddy was a tremendous talent, tremendous asset if you could get him to show up. I mean, Dad brought him. Dad and Ole had him in WCW, and he was supposed to be in Macon that night. Dad was still in Atlanta. They were finishing up putting together the TV because I think they did TVs on Wednesday. He was supposed to be, I think, either in Macon and Columbus. And here comes Dad walking into the Ramada Inn at 8:30 at night. And right there in the lobby, standing in the lobby, was Buddy Landell.
Yeah.
And, of course, Dad had already known he didn't show up. So he said, hey, Buddy, be the TV early tomorrow because Ole wants to talk to you. And you know what happened there.
Oh, yeah.
Right off the bat. No more Buddy Landell. He was fine. So
he was his own worst enemy. Like I've said 100 times, he was his own worst enemy.
Sad. Very sad with the tremendous, just unbelievable talent. Unbelievable. And when you get to see these shows, and ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go through episodes 239, 240, 241, 242 today. And those were in the months of April. You've got to see the match with Reed and Landell against the Rock and Roll Express. It proves just what we're talking about, this great talent of Buddy Landell. Just phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. One thing I left out last week and we need to talk about is an incident with Butch Reed, and this was during the TV tournament, and this is something I left out from last time. And Reed interfered in a match earlier. Terry Taylor run his shoulder into the post. Reed come out there and he was, I'm complaining about my shoulder. It's been hurt. I can't wrestle today. And so Boyd Pierce tells him, you either wrestle today or you are out of the tournament. Well, Reed didn't wrestle, but underneath and inside that sling was the coal miner's glove. And I mean, Reed wears Terry Taylor out with it. And the people are just, I mean, it shows the work that you put into Terry Taylor was paying off. I mean, it really was. I mean, people were literally crying. And Taylor was just, I mean, he was laid out. And it, of course, sets up for what's going to happen. And, of course, that sets up for the matches that are coming up at the Superdome as well, which we're going to talk about in a minute.
Here's the thing with Terry Taylor. I don't know if I was the only guy that saw what I thought I saw in him and did with him. Nobody else did anything with him. I thought he was a hell of a babyface.
Right. And he was. He absolutely was. His response from the people were near Magnum TA and near Rock and Roll Express, really.
Yeah.
I was noticing when I was watching one of the shows, one of the TV shows, on the front row of the Irish McNeil Boys Club, from one side where they had the bleachers, which is in the front, and then on the other side, front row, was all women all the way around. I noticed that today when I was rewatching some of the stuff, and that was what you were talking about changing the demographic or expanding the demographics, pretty much.
When I came there for Bill a year or 6 months before, it was damn near all males in the audience. Whether big rednecks or young kids or or dads and sons. But when we got Taylor and the Rock and Roll and the Dundees and the Landales, the women started coming, and as you said.
Now, last week in part of our interview, you mentioned that Watts was considering the Fabulous Ones. Tell him how you persuaded him that the Fabulous Ones were not the ones that you should go with the Rock and Roll.
The main thing was their personality couldn't have put up with Bill. So if you'd brought him in and he was Bill Watts, they would have left. So I didn't think we need to give him any time or do this or get Ricky and Robert over and then see whatever we're going to do. This must be Bill Watts calling. My telephone's ringing.
Well, you've offended him yet again.
Yeah, I hear you. Don't Joy, let me call you back. Okay, we're doing a TV show.
That always happens. That always happens. You middle of anything, important meetings, restaurant, whatever it is, your phone rings every time. That's at movies, whatever. It always happens. It always happens. Like I said, tremendous. And like I said, you've made the right decision, obviously. Rock and Roll, when they came out first time, I mean, the people exploded. So you made the right choice. And there's something else. And later in the shows.
And here was the cut Steve and Stan short. Here was my other way of thinking. They were older than Ricky and Robert. So if the kids got over or they just lasted a little bit, they could go on their way. Then we bring in the mature team. That's how I was thinking of it. But it never happened. You know how Ricky and Robert never went away.
Right. I mean, it was hard to replace them. Because it was because there was no. It was just like the Junkyard Dog. There was no replacing them. It was there was no replacing them. You had to move on. You just had to move on, and it's no trying to capture that magic one more time. It just can't happen. You just really can't. Let's go ahead and move on to the first show of April, which is leading into the Superdome. Wrestling 2 versus Jumpin' Joe Savoldi. And I'm going to tell you, when you don't pay attention to 2's knee lift until you see them in slow motion. Right. And you watch the slow motion of Wrestling 2, or Mr. Wrestling at this point, the North American champion, knee lifting Joe Savoldi in slow motion. You get to see what the impact with that knee was, because and check it out. That's on episode 239, ladies and gentlemen. It's in the slow-mo. It's in the bumper as they go out telling what the next match is. It was fantastic. And he really nails Joe Savoldi, and the impact was evident in the slow-mo. Then we come up with a great match. Midnight Express versus Jeff Young and Mike Jackson. What a match. And whatever happened to Jeff Young, he was so good.
I thought so too. A good-looking kid. I never seen him before or after.
Well, didn't he work with us when we were in Chattanooga doing the Georgia Championship Wrestling Superstars? It seemed like I remember him from there. He wrestled against Adrian Street. He was really good then. I thought, well, maybe I met somebody else, but I thought
I
it was.
really don't know
But I'll
about the
tell you,
Georgia thing.
yeah, I'll tell you though, that match with Mike Jackson and Jeff Young was a good
Yes,
match.
it was very good.
I mean, you couldn't beat it. I mean, and it was a surprise. It was absolutely a surprise. When you're watching other TV shows, they put a lot of squash matches on, which they're not entertaining. I'll just be honest. They're not entertaining, and they don't highlight anything. But in this match, you get to highlight the teamwork of the midnight, and plus you showcase new talent such as Jeff Young, and we all know about the capabilities of Mike Jackson. Absolutely great. Absolutely great. And that
Mike Jackson had been 6 foot tall. He could have been the world's champion. He was a hell of a talent.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Then we move on. Of course, we had John King against Terry Taylor. And then we're getting ready to, of course, that's the lead up to the match for the Mid-South Television Championship, the last match of the tournament. And that's a big build up, and you're getting it ready. You're getting it ready, and we'll talk about that as we go on tonight. Then comes a match that I believe rivals any match ever, and I'm talking about Buddy Landell, that we talked about earlier, and Butch Reed against Ricky and Robert Rock and Roll Express. What a match. Absolutely one of the, just a stellar match. If you ever want to see what we talked about with Landell and his brilliant ability, this is it. I mean, when Landell was in there with Robert Gibson, it was magic. I mean, it was magic.
When Landell was on, there was no beating him. He was as good as anybody. Better than most.
And Reed and Landell, great team. Great team. And in that match, that crowd was as loud as you can get it. And that's during the whole match. The people are doing, they're chanting rock and roll, rock and roll. It's fantastic. Absolutely. One of the best matches I had seen. I mean, and I'll just tell you, it was a pleasure to see, absolute pleasure to see that. Of course, in that match, Cornette comes down, sets at ringside. And of course, at the end, Cornette gets involved by pulling the top rope down. Robert Gibson comes off onto the floor. He's out. And that leaves Ricky in there with Buddy and Reed. Reed pulls out a foreign object, hits Ricky, and Reed and Landell's the winner with the help of Cornette, of course. And I can assure you, when that match came to the local arenas, it had to be electric.
Unbelievable.
Absolutely. Of course, that's just one. We're not at the end of that show. That's just the beginning. Pretty much the beginning, because later on in the show, we got the Russian invader, which we had discovered was none other than Jerry Novak, one of the original bounty hunters. And I'm going to tell you, you can't get better. You cannot get any better. Wait a second. Jay Smith. Yes, that match is on YouTube. It's a part of the entire broadcast for Mid-South. If you go to, it's the name of the title is 1984 04 05 E239 Mid-South. And that will get you this entire fantastic broadcast. I mean, the entire show. And they come in about the middle of the match, and it was absolutely spectacular. Like I said, it was you will just sit there and say, where has this been? Because me and Bill was talking before, these shows they hold up even today. I mean, they hold up today. They're just so fantastic. And like I said, Bill just started watching his own stuff, and he said, darn, I was going to watch 5 minutes, and it's 60 minutes later.
They wrapped up the show.
Oh, it was something. I mean, and they moved that fast. I mean, they really did it, and it's because you are engaged. You are engaged with the show, and it's absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Jerry Novak, of course, he was the bounty hunter, and of course, Duggan he went over with that with the spear. And then we had the tag match, Volkov and Masayo Ito against Poffo and Weingroff. Like I said, these matches are great matches. They're great matches. You didn't I'm sorry, and Georgia was the worst about the mismatches, and I admit that part of that was because of the restrictions from TBS, but you can't. This show you can't beat. Nobody can beat this show. No time anywhere. This is fantastic shows. Then of course they end the show with TA versus Bob Owens, and the crowd is now chatting TA, which you accomplished your goal with Magnum TA. Tell me how you what do you think about Magnum TA?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, well, I guess it would be me. It's just you and me here, right?
That is right.
That I figured that out. No, when I got there, TA was the only baby face that looked like a baby face.
Sure.
And they weren't really doing anything with him. They weren't beating him, but they weren't doing nothing with him. So I went to Bill and said, "Hey, man, we need to start doing something with this kid." He said, "Well, you're the damn booker, boy." I said, "Well, okay, gotcha." So when he said that, I understood what he meant. So
yeah, well,
we
and
made
you
him
did
into a star.
Yeah, and you did it perfectly, and actually created one of the biggest villains ever with wrestling too, or Mr. Wrestling. I think just absolutely fantastic. All right, then we come up.
I don't believe the people saw that coming.
No, and you know what? I'm watching the show. This is one of the match where I talk about with Savoldi, and where Wrestling 2 hit Savoldi with the knee lift.
Knee lift,
and
yeah.
And the people are watching, and they don't like what he's done. They don't like it, but they're hurt. They really, I think the fans are hurt. Their feelings are hurt because of what he did. And I think that was the reason that it was very difficult to ever switch him back, because of what he did.
Yeah.
Because like I said, he broke their hearts, and it's very hard to overcome a broken heart. And I think that's what happened in this case. All right, now we move to the next show. Like I said, you start watching one, and before long, you're going to be 2:00 in the morning, and you're still going to be up, and you can't sleep because the wrestler has been so good. It just can't. So they basically review the match with Wrestling 2 and Magnum TA, and then comes up the big match for the TV title. It's going to be Terry Taylor, Crusher, Khrushchev, and I'm going to tell you, Darso. Bill was phenomenal.
Right.
As big as he was really, really good. And it seemed like there was nothing he couldn't do. I mean, absolutely nothing.
Oh, he was a terrific worker. So I mean,
I think as people have said, there's been no better crew. Probably one of the greatest assembly of wrestlers that had ever been put together. I really think so. And Khrushchev was an example of that. In the match with Terry Taylor, we start off, and at the beginning of the match, as Terry Taylor comes out, the ring announcer says, "Terry, we have a lady here that has a special gift she would like to give you." Now, as you well know, ladies and gentlemen, professional wrestling, if anyone receives a gift from a fan, whether it be a jacket, a trophy, flowers, by the end of the segment, that gift will be destroyed. It doesn't make any difference. That's just the way it is. Let's just be honest. Okay. Well, this is no different. That's right. If you get a jacket, it gets ripped up. That's just what. Never. You get presented a trophy, it's going to be busted before the show's over with. So anyway, Taylor gets in the ring. Reed's out there causing all kinds of trouble as normal. He comes out with those flowers and destroys the flowers, just busts them all over the ring apron. Taylor comes out and he's trying to get the flowers back together. Reed attacks him and pile drives him to the floor. They go to commercial. He comes back, and Taylor, he can't be. He will not. He's been going too strong. He's been putting too much into it. He's got to go. And so he gets in the ring, and finally, Khrushchev really overcomes him and finishes him off with the second pile driver. And I'm telling you, the people, when he's pile drived, and that was over. I mean, the people were, they were shook. They really shook up with Taylor, and it just shows you the work that you put into Taylor has paid off.
Right.
Absolutely. So then you come out there, you had the big celebration. Volkov was out there, Reed's out there, and he's smiling like the Cheshire Cat, like he's eating the canary and anything else. I mean, he was just fantastic. And they presented him with the with the Mid-South Television Trophy and the medal, and with $10,000. And the people are just going nuts. They really are. Then we come up with the situation about from the Superdome. And before we go ahead and talk about that, let's talk about the Superdome card, because that happened on April the 7th. And this was your first Superdome. And this is what the matches look like for that event. First match was John King, and he beat Joe Savoli in the first match. Tom Zink, I believe, is that the Tom Zink from AWA, Bill?
Yeah, that's him.
Now, what was he planning on coming in, or was he just one shot?
Take a look at him and see.
Oh, okay.
He just come down to try out, or whatever you call it.
Right. Then we had Buddy Landell. He beat Lanny Poffo. And then a tag team match, Rock and Roll Express versus Nikolai Volkov and the Russian Invader. Of course, the Rock and Roll Express win that. Kerry Von Erich versus Masayo Ito. He beats him. Terry Taylor wins by disqualification over Butch Reed. Of course, that explains what's been happening in the last few weeks. With that match, Mid-South Tag Team Championship, Midnight Express versus Pork Chop Cash and Bill Dundee. It was supposed to be Troy Graham. Troy apparently was in an accident, I think. And Bill, you ended up taking Troy Graham's place in that.
Yeah.
Was that had to be heartbreaking, because substitutions are not well received by fans.
Right.
Yeah. So what was the Bruce Brothers? Were they scheduled to come in full time, or were they just there for one shot?
No, they were same thing. We'll take a look at them.
Yeah. Well, I think they would have been quite the asset, because no one was better on the mic than Troy Graham. I mean,
right.
Let's just get it. I mean, he could go 30 minutes and I don't think even take a breath talking. I'm telling you right now, fantastic. North American Championship was on the line. Mr. Wrestling, or formerly known as Mr. Wrestling 2 versus Magnum TA. And in that one, Wrestling 2's protege, Mr. Wrestling 2, which is none other than Hercules Hernandez, Ray Hernandez, that would come later on, as Mr. Wrestling 2, as his protege. And Wrestling 2 ends up stealing another one from Magnum TA. And in the main event was the lights out match, Cowboy Bill Watts, Stagger Lee versus the Midnight Express. And then Jim Cornette gets to wear what Jim Ross calls his natural attire, his dress. So that took place at the Superdome. Tremendous. They were saying near 25,000 people for that one. Tremendous crowd, tremendous card. But Bill, I want to talk about the Superdome, because in big shows like this, normally it ends something. But I noticed this was ending nothing. This was the beginning.
I never quite understood that philosophy, because Memphis, we did it every Monday, but we was a weekly town, and we went all around the South, so we just kept the angle going. If it did good in Louisville, we took it to Evansville. If it did good in Evansville, we took it to Lexington, brought it back to Nashville, went back, did TV Saturday morning, and started all over again. So I never quite understood that philosophy of, well, we'll blow it off here, we'll do this here. Just keep it going as long as it's going.
Sure. And plus, you have other shows coming up that week.
Right.
But like I said, it was the beginning. You had Wrestling 2 coming in, just the beginning. It was absolutely phenomenal. And later on, we'll find out that in 1984, there was an extra Superdome event because the World's Fair was in New Orleans that year. And that would come up in June coming up. Now, as we continue, we talked about the match where Cornette wore the dress. Well, Bill Watts wanted to thank everybody for their support and was going to show the tape of Cornette in what Jim Ross called his natural attire, the dress. But when it started to show, it was the match from last week where Butch Reed and Buddy Landell beat the Rock and Roll Express. Cornette come out there and he had the tape and he was all flipping it up and they were pulling it off. Condra was cutting the tape and he said, "We're never going to show this. You're not going to show anything that embarrasses the Cornette, and you'll never see this again." And so, and again, first time that's been seen, right?
Yeah.
Especially there.
Yeah. So we just cut it up, or that was, everybody went and shocked the people, and you know what I mean? We did things that they hadn't seen before. I think that's what got everybody over, or helped.
And so far, as far as all the situations, there was only one thing shown from that Superdome card. It was a lot talked about, but the only one thing that was shown was the new Wrestling 2's protege, Wrestling 2, coming in. That was the only thing. which in a lot of cases you see a big show like that, the very next TV, you get to see everything that happens. And I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, I do too.
Absolutely.
If you saw, nothing happened on them. We never showed nothing.
That's right. And they'll talk about it. They'll talk about it, but you won't get to see it because, again, the main revenue stream for Mid-South Wrestling was ticket sales. There was no sponsors, basically. I mean, ticket sales was it. I mean, you didn't put butts in the seats, you didn't get paid. That's the way it went. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they had the destruction of the match. Let's see. We went through. Oh, Stagger Lee. Now he's getting ready to go against Mr. Wrestling 2. And Mr. Wrestling 2, the original, I mean, the second, I'm confused now. The Hercules Hernandez Wrestling 2. Let's just say it.
Right.
He was wrestling against Joe Savoldi. And in that match, Mr. Wrestling 1 and 2 decide they're going to team up on Joe Savoldi. And here comes Stagger Lee. And he gives just a hellacious clothesline to Hercules Hernandez Wrestling 2. I think we'll just call him that for argument's sake. It's a little confusing on that. And then the next week is even, you think that what else can happen? What else can you do? Well, next week, right on television, one of your big matches, a match you've been waiting for, a match everybody's been waiting for, Midnight Express versus Rock and Roll Express, and that's on the next show. And in that match, you'll notice something very different. As the Midnight Express comes to the ring, first of all, the Rock and Roll comes to the ring first. Then comes Bobby and Dennis. They don't have any robes on, and they're missing Jim Cornette. Cornette is not at ringside. And everybody's kind of wondering, well, why is Mr. Cornette not here? That's Jim Ross. Why is Mr. Cornette not here? He's conspicuous by his absence. Match goes on, and in that, Ricky Morton has Dennis Condrey, I believe it was Dennis Condrey, in a roll-up. And from the audience, a woman jumps in the ring and hits Ricky Morton, knocks him out. Midnight Express beats him. 1, 2, 3. They come back, and as the woman gets out of the ring, Robert Gibson reaches, grabs, yanks the wig off, and of course it's Jimmy Cornette. And as Jim Ross said, in his natural attire. And in this, I mean, he even goes even further. Apparently, Mr. Cornette has now come out of the closet for us all.
Yeah.
They come back, and the fans, or Grizzly Smith, supposedly gave Jim Ross the purse, and inside the purse they had this humongous rock in it, where Cornette had hit him with the rock. Now, what kind of matches did you have? Did you have matches in other arenas where Cornette had to continue to wear the dress, or what was going on? Because we don't have any record of what matches were going on in the arenas.
Well, sometimes if they lost, he would have to wear the dress, you know. Yeah, but mainly we try to get back to normal.
Sure. It's, you know, when you see great stuff like this, it makes your own mind. I mean, I'm thinking about, you remember the old, well, I don't know if you remember the old deal where Dick Slater against Wrestling 2 and he had to wear the Wrestling 2 mask with the Slater had to wear the I'm a Turkey mask, or Bob Orton had to wear the mop head. I was thinking about, you know, you let your mind explode. You could make Cornette wear the dress until the Midnight Beat the Rock and Roll Express or something. That would have been fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's because, and that's what it does. When you see great stuff like this, it inspires you. And that's right. That's what happened. I mean, and it's just fantastic. Absolutely. The next match we had was the Imposter Wrestling 2. I mean, Hercules Wrestling 2, and he was against Steve Brinson. Brinson, he was a pretty big boy. I'll just tell you that much right now. And Hercules had a hard time, especially trying to get him up on his shoulders in that backbreaker. I don't think he ever made it. He ended up with suplex on that one. Then we had with the match with Khrushchev versus Jim Duggan. What a match for TV. Basically a return match for the Superdome. And the people for Duggan were standing. I mean, he was as over or more so than a Rock and Roll.
Oh, yeah, he was over. Big redneck. Yeah, I mean, really, that's what he was. And he came across to the people as that, and they liked him.
Just one of them. Basically, right. One of them. Yeah,
that's
sure.
It. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, in the match, Volkov comes out with that with the gold miner's glove, which was a reoccurring theme with the Russians. Terry Taylor comes out, and he tries to to get in there. And as Volkov comes in, then you had Ito and Landale. They're stopping the Rock and Roll from getting in the ring. Reed stops. Terry Taylor is over doing the commentary. Taylor tries to get in. He tries to help. Reed stops him. He's got him hung in the corner on the ring in the bottom rope, has him hung by the neck. Of course, he's still supporting the injury from the pile driver. And in the ring, the Russians, Khrushchev and Volkov, shaved the beard of Jim Duggan. People were not happy about that. And neither was Duggan, for that matter.
I hear you. But he got paid.
Yeah, well, if you could have read, I'm glad they didn't have a mic on him because he was saying all kinds of stuff.
Oh, all kinds of stuff,
You could read those lips. He said, what kind of is this? I must say, I know that the Russians were happy about that. So maybe some were happy about that. But I'll tell you another person that was happy about that, about Jim Duggan getting his beard shaved like that. It's Tim Horner. Tim Horner, just this past Monday on this channel, Tim Horner said something about people with beards and disparaging remarks about people with beards and tattoos. So I'm sure he was very happy about that, kind of cleaning him up. I'm just saying. So anyway, so then we got a match. Another big. I mean, you didn't spare the talent, Barry. I mean, you really didn't. You gave the people kind of a glimpse of what they were going to see in the arenas. Match comes up, non-title match, Mr. Wrestling versus Stagger Lee. And this is a main event match. I mean, this is basically the big return match, pretty much from what happened to Junkyard Dog in New Orleans. And the people were just going nuts. Of course, it ends up with the protege, Hercules, Mr. Wrestling 2, jumping in the match, going after Stagger Lee's mask. And in that match, then TA and everybody comes out, and then, of course, they leave him in land. But in that match, it was amazing. And again, it talks about the space between the dressing room door and getting to the ring. Stagger Lee catches 2 in the thump, and Mr. Wrestling kicks out, which shows I'm sure he was supposed to be there before that, but he didn't make it. There you go. Not everything worked out perfectly, but nobody noticed it except for us. We only the only ones who noticed it.
We knew.
Exactly. So then we come up and like I said, these shows basically tell the story. And Bill, as you said, you just watched thought you was going to watch 5 minutes, and the next thing you know, it's going off.
Yeah, and I wrote the show, and I knew what was going on. I had the thing right here.
That's right.
But the way they executed it was unbelievable. It was all very good.
It was. Like I said, they still hold up after all these years. And if you get a chance to see all of these matches, and the same thing I told you, you can change up for the dates and the episodes, and you can get them in order. And that's how we're watching them. And like I said, you're not seeing the whole thing because without the local interviews telling what the matches are, you really have no context of what's really happening. You don't get the full picture without that, because again, the towns and the events happening in Alexandria and Monroe and Little Rock and Oklahoma City and Tulsa were important. That's where the money came from. So there it goes. Here we come up to show number 242. And this one, Mr. Cornette has decided that he's going to give Grizzly Smith 3 open contracts, and he can put the Midnight Express in defending the Mid-South Tag Team Championship against whoever he wants to, except the Rock and Roll Express and Hacksaw Jim Duggan and Magnum TA and Terry Taylor. He had a whole list of people he couldn't, so they ended up having the matches. And again, you had the Midnight Express in the first match against Greg Kostler and Jason Walker. People from all over the world was walking, just waiting for that match, just no doubt. And there was the beginning of the match, no doubt who was going to win that match. Then in the second Mid-South Tag Team Championship match, we had the Midnight Express against Tony Torrez and John King. Now, Tony Torrez was really good, wasn't he, Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good. So he was against the Midnight Express again, and again, Midnight Express have no trouble going over on this one. So Grizzly Smith has come up with a new idea. He has something new. People that are not on Mr. Cornette's list. So they make the announcement in the next Mid-South Tag Team match. It will be the Midnight Express against Mr. Wrestling 1 and 2. And that was something. And I'll just be honest with you. I would have liked to have seen that. I think that would have been a good match. But anyway, so it comes up. Matches come up, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be the match. And your next opponent's going to be Mr. Wrestling 1 and 2. He said, wait a minute. That's not what we agreed to. Wait a minute. I didn't put them on my list. This is Cornette. I didn't put them on my list. But no. Well, surely not. Okay. Well, here they come. Wrestling 1 and 2. They have the robes on and they come with the mask. Get in the ring. The robes come off, and it was obviously not Mr. Wrestling 1 and 2. It was the Rock and Roll Express, and they take the mask on. They take the mask off, and then that was the first time we had a new referee in the Mid-South. That would be my father, Ron West, making his first appearance on Mid-South television. And in that match, Rock and Roll Express win the Mid-South Tag Team Championship. And I don't think it worked out as planned for Mr. Cornette. But anyway, there it goes. And the people just go nuts. Absolutely nuts. And again, I think you did something that they didn't expect.
Right.
Absolutely. But anyway, so the Rock and Roll Express, the Mid-South Tag Team Champions, which leads to another match that I will give you to. It's from the Sam Houston Coliseum. It's on, I think it's May the 11th. Rock and Roll Express versus the Midnight Express. My father is again the referee. Check that match out. It's a classic. It's absolutely brilliant, and it comes from the Sam Houston Coliseum. There's no commentary. Obviously, it was not for television, but they posted it, and it's on YouTube. Check it out. Fantastic match. Then we come up match 4. It was Crusher Khrushchev versus Magnum TA, and again, the coal miner's glove comes a part of it yet again, and in the end, it was Crusher Khrushchev. That was one of these great. Actually, Magnum TA won the match. He caught Crusher Khrushchev in a belly-to-belly suplex. And at the 3 count, TA or Crusher Khrushchev powers TA off of himself and pancakes the referee, knocking the referee, making him groggy. And in that, Crusher Khrushchev pulls out the coal miner's glove, nails TA. And when the referee comes up, he sees Crusher Khrushchev laying over top of Magnum TA, picks up Khrushchev's hand and raises it after TA had won the match. Absolutely brilliant. Love it. Absolutely love it. That's a match 4 on that particular show. Then we have a big time match again. Buddy Landell, Stagger Lee. What a match. And it comes out, and this is, it goes, I mean, Landell attacks right off the bat, Stagger Lee. And then that Stagger Lee does his retaliation and catches Landell with a thump. But as the thump comes down, here comes Butch Reed, and they paint Stagger Lee yellow. And again, the people just going nuts. And then Duggan and the Rock and Roll Express out for the save. I'm telling you, Bill, had they ever painted somebody there before?
Not much. I don't think so.
Yeah, there's something, definitely something. Again, all bringing new ideas with talent that have been there. Reed and Junkyard Dog or Stagger Lee have been there for a while.
Yeah. I don't. Big Ernie Ladd was the booker, and I believe Ernie had done everything that Ernie figured, and he was just cold.
Right.
So when we came back then, we just revived everybody.
And brought talent that had not been seen there.
Right.
Typically, from what I've seen through shows before, I mean, there's exceptions to that. Mr. Olympia's an exception, Jerry Stubbs. There are exceptions to that, but most people had already been seen there, right, somewhere down the road, except for Rock and Roll, except for Bobby and Dennis.
And all the guys I brought in could do the bit. They could all work.
Sure.
Ricky Roberts, Dennis Connery, Cornette. Nobody liked Cornette. The boys didn't even like Cornette. No.
He was very endearing. I know.
Yeah. He was a hell of a manager.
And I'm sure that he was invited to go eat with them periodically.
Periodically, yeah. As long as he paid. Let's go eat, Jimmy.
You know, there were some people, Bill has said, that you hot shot it during that time. And I absolutely disagree with that. I don't agree with that whatsoever. I don't think there was any hot shotting done. It's just that it was just so good with the talent that you had was just hard to follow, and that's
Right.
the bottom line. I mean, you'd have to bring an entire new talent in, whole new roster in, crew to try to at least keep it at the same. But the idea that you hotshot it was nonsense, I think.
I really don't understand what hot shot is.
Well, well, I mean that apparently people who've never worked in Memphis. Maybe that's the problem.
Right.
Never know that.
I grew up on that.
Sure. Well, I mean, we in Tennessee and Alabama and Georgia, we all. I mean, that was all. That was the way it was done. I mean,
we didn't think anything of putting a noose around your neck and throwing you over the top rope and tying it off. That was just Memphis.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's that hot shotting, I guess. But I don't really know. That was just how I saw the business.
Sure. Absolutely. And you know what? You were right.
Yeah, it worked.
And the answer to that was look at the houses, look at the crowds, look at the ratings, look at the souvenir sales. That tells you all you need to know. No doubt.
That's it. All you need to know.
Now,
thank you, sir.
We were supposed to do 30. We're into 41 now.
Well, that's good. We'll try for 50.
41, but Bill, I think we're gonna end it here, and we're going to.
Well, just a second.
Hold on.
Let me ask you. Can I do some show and tell before we go off of here?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Sir. Because Bill's got something he's looking at, and everybody's probably saying, "What is Bill looking at?" Well, I have probably not the same ones he's got but I do have some sheets of what he's looking at. So everybody's probably looking and says, "What's Bill looking at?" And this will be something that he's looking at. Can everybody see that? This is what
TV format.
This was the TV format that was used every week, wasn't it, Bill?
Yeah, one like it.
Yeah, every week something like that was used. And then I want to show something else, and Bill might have these as well.
I haven't got none.
But here, there's his list. And here is when they did the interviews. There's actually 2 sheets of this, but when they would do the interviews, this is how they kind of looked when they would do all the interviews and stuff. This is how they were done. And then when Jim Ross would tell people about the wrestling matches, and he would say, "Hey, the wrestlers coming to so and so," this is what Jim Ross used during the. Yeah, and you'll see Dad's notes on here. I guess finishes that Bill Dundee told him to execute is on no.
I hear you.
And then some people probably wouldn't know how the wrestlers knew that they were going to go places. And here's how the booking sheets look.
Booking sheet, yeah.
For that, told them who they was going to wrestle with.
Yeah, okay. And you can see if it's a tag match, they put an X on it. And here is a program that has Butch Reed and the Junkyard Dog on there.
Yeah.
When was? Oh, well, like I see, it was in August.
It's February. It's Friday, July 20th, 1984.
Okay. All right. We're not quite there yet. We're going to be covering May next week. We're going to cover May.
I just wanted to come on and show and tell.
And I'm going to tell you. Go ahead. What was you saying, Bill? What was you saying?
Said we appreciated his showing up with the things.
Yeah. He's got all kinds. We got all kinds of things stashed everywhere in this house and his house and everywhere.
Me too. Look at all this. Look at all TVs.
Yeah, and we're just scratching the surface. We're only in April. May's coming up, and this is 1984 was a very unusual year because they're going to have an extra Superdome wrestling extravaganza in June due to the World's Fair being in New Orleans. So we'll be covering that as we get closer to June. We're going to be covering May next week right here on Pro Wrestling Inside Out. Bill, you got anything you want to end with today?
No, sir. I think we're good. What now? I didn't quite hear you.
Yeah, he's still looking at his stuff. Do you have anything you want to say before we leave?
No, just I enjoyed doing it, and we'll do it again next week, right?
We'll do it again next week. We're going to cover May next week, and it just gets hotter from here, ladies and gentlemen. For Bill Dundee, for Brent West, I'm Rodney West, and we'll see you on the next Pro Wrestling Inside and Out. Thank you, everybody.
All right, guys.